Second basis, Leviticus 23, verse 22. When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap from the very edges of your field or gather the gleanings of the harvest. Leave them for the poor, the alien. I am Adonai, your God. Leaving the corners of the field. Fields were square even back then, but they harvested in a circle with huge gangs of people with sickles. And so when they finished the gang going round and round and round through the harvest, the corners of the field meant you'd have to take the whole gang and walk to the far corners to be able to get that, and it wasn't really worth the effort. Similarly, the gleanings. The crew would go through hacking down with sickles the harvest of wheat, and then usually the women and the children would come behind, gathering them up into sheaves. And you don't get everything on the way by, but it wasn't really worth going back just to pick up the gleanings that may have been dropped. If these little pieces of the edges of your life won't make a big difference in your life, but they'll feed the hungry, they belong to them. And so after the men went through the fields and harvest, and the women and children went through the fields and stacked, the poor would follow right behind them, collecting their own harvest. There's an expectation there that part of everything you give on a regular basis, as you're harvesting, you are also giving. So this idea of regular giving, not on the great occasion in your life or when you happen to feel the charitable instinct, but that at the very time that you're gathering in, you're also allowing others to gather from your harvest as well. And then finally, there's the concept, that probably the one that most people know in Leviticus 27:30 of tithing. And all the tithe of the land, whether the seed of the land or the fruit of the tree, belongs to Adonai. It is holy unto God. I find it interesting that people know about tithing. I wish I could convince my congregation to hear about that. Because, a tenth of your harvest is what a tithe is. A tenth of your harvest was designated to support the community, specifically the priests and the Levites, who were the religious community, who had no land and no harvest, and this was how they supported their families. Now, the community saw to it that there was a religious core to the community. But if you really just thought about what I just said, the tithe is just one of these things. So the tithe was just the beginning. Once you gave 10% of this obligatory gift as you brought in your harvest, then you had gleanings, which were also being picked up by the poor, and then you had already given first fruits as the harvest had come in. So this was just one part of a whole web of things that when we lived together in the land and we cared for each other, because we were all one family, that we saw to it that there were not poor among us. Now, this value of tzedakah has been developed over time as we left our agrarian roots and the Holy Land to be part of whatever harvest that we bring in. Part of our income, if that income is the basis of our wealth, part of our net wealth, part of our basic instinct of giving. And I just want to leave you with one premise. There was a famous Jewish philosopher named Moses Maimonides who lived about the year 1200. And he structured what we call the ladder of charity, 8 rungs of charity that are all about how you give. Because that's the core, as I said, to the tradition. Not to what you give or the value of what you give or whether they're appreciative of what you give, but rather how you give. Because it's the quality of your soul that's the question in tzedakah. For Maimonides, giving unwillingly, meaning being encouraged to give and then giving, was the first rung of charity, keeping in mind that means it's a charitable deed. And if you're wondering how a person should give unwillingly, let me mention that the obligation of giving was taken so seriously that you could encourage a person to give physically. You might want to write this down if you're in the collection department of charitable giving. You could actually walk into their home and encourage them by taking it, if you were part of the organization that gathered the funds. Giving with a smile would be the next level up, meaning graciously. Giving freely when you're asked. Giving without being asked. Giving anonymously in the sense that you are not known. Giving anonymously in the sense that you don't even know where those funds are going. Giving anonymously in both directions like that. And then finally, the highest rung of charity, which was helping a person to become self-sufficient. The teaching a person to fish model. That even above anonymous giving, which has deep roots in Jewish charity, the idea that there's one thing worth breaking that uncomfortable distance of anonymity, and that's to help another person so that they can have the ability to be able to make a living on their own and give charity of their own.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Reverend Cosby to pick up on that, because I have heard him speak many times, as I'm sure many of us have, on the last point that Maimonides made there. Reverend Cosby?
Oh, thank you so much. I want to speak about philanthropy as a practical way to maintain community. Quite often, I think that when we talk about philanthropy, we talk about the good feelings, the warm and fuzzy feelings that those who give receive, or we talk about philanthropy simply as a continuation of our moral responsibility as people of faith. But there is a practical side to philanthropy that I think is spoken of through Scripture, and I think we can see the importance of it just in our own community. And that is that we are all interconnected as human beings. And what affects one community also affects another community. The two first questions God posed to the human family was one vertical, one horizontal. God asked Adam, Adam, where are you? That's the vertical question. The second question is a question God posed to Cain. Cain, where is your brother? That is the horizontal question. And I think that's basically fundamental to all religions. The vertical, where are you in relationship to me? The horizontal, where are you in relationship to other people? It is essential that both be correct, that we have a good vertical and horizontal relationships, vertical with God, horizontal with others. And the reason is because if the strength of the strong is not made available to the weak, then the weakness of the weak will cross the fence and undermine the strength of the strong. So it is in the best interest of the strong to help lift up the weak, or the weakness of the weak will undermine the strength of the strong. Prime example, when HIV was first discovered, there was not much attention given to it because it was perceived as being an exclusively gay disease. But not to help another means that you jeopardize your own health status. So it's like if we're in an airplane with 30,000 feet in the air, you have the privilege of being first class, you have the privilege of having a full course meal, you have the privilege of leg space, you have the privilege of leather seats. I'm in coach, separated from you by a curtain. I'm in the back, you have a full course meal, I have peanuts and half a Coke. We are 30,000 feet in the air. And the pilot announces that we have engine trouble in coach. And you say, well, because I'm in first class, I'm not concerned about coach. Well, the fact of the matter is, if coach goes down, first class goes down. And if any part of the community goes down, we all go down. It was in the best interest of the Good Samaritan to be concerned with what took place on the Jericho Road.